Welcome, everybody. Okay, I never quite know when the camera starts now. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report. Welcome all. Here to talk to you about the latest news from Ukraine. It is Wednesday, January 17. Let me get TikTok rolling. Hello all. In the meantime, get your hellos going and go live. Ukraine war update. There we go on TikTok. Actually, it's been a while that we've done this. Say where you're from, because I think it's kind of fun to have people weigh in and just kind of say where you're all hailing from, if you would. So please do that. All right, TikTok is rolling in now. Excellent. Anyway, hello all. So how are we today? A lot of news today, actually. Pretty busy news day on the Ukraine front. What am I looking for here? That's what I'm looking for here. Oh boy. Anyway, hello all. Thank you for the gift, Nicola, or Nicholas, whichever you are. What's going on, guys? Good evening from Sweden. Jens. I've been liking Baldur's Gate is good. I mean, I'm liking, and I like to. I'm getting a part of it that I'm less liking right now. Hey, Martin. I got an Xbox at Christmas. Hey, Bryce. Thank you for the gift, and Martin both. I got an Xbox for Christmas, so I've been enjoying that. But it depends. Like sometimes the game, like right now, I'm in a slow spot, so the Arcane Tower is a bit slow for my taste, but it's okay. Anyway, we'll live. Anyway, oops, make sure it's not. Hang on here. I'm trying to make sure my screen isn't cut off. Is my screen cut off? Oh, it is cut off, isn't it? Anyway, hey YouTube, TikTok. 1 second. Hey YouTubers, did I actually have my screen cut off today? I think it is. Is the screen cut off on the left for you guys, where it says Washington D.C. and stuff? Hey TikTok. Is this backwards? No, this is the way I normally do it here. But YouTubers, how's it doing? I think it's cutting it off. Let me know if you would. Oops. It's delayed. That's what's hard with this. It's delayed. I think it's cut off. There's nothing on the left. That's not my question. Thank you. There we go. There we go. All right. Now I did it right. Okay. I fixed it. All right, YouTubers, now you'll see what I mean. There we go. That's correct now. All right. All is well in the world. I fixed my YouTube broadcast. There we go. All right. Anyway, hey, guys. Hey, TikTokers. How you doing today? Yes, this is the mirror image, so the map will look correct. Exactly. I'll grab my map, and you can even see on TikTok. I do the mirror. There we go. See? Everything's right, so the map will look the correct way. Thank you, Bryce, for the hat there. All right. See, all better. All better. Anyway, guys, so welcome, everybody. This is my daily show, as you guys know, Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, U.S., where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. The way the show works is I will go through the news first that I think is important, and then we'll take your guys' questions in the second half. That's pretty much it. As always, I really appreciate you guys. Is it still cut off on the left? Don't tell me that. Sorry, we're trying to get a little. I'm doing a new. I'm using a new software for streaming this on YouTube onto YouTube, and all right, hang on. Okay, don't know what that means, Jason. Don't. Okay, everything's fine now. Okay, good. All right, just trying to make sure the microphone should be. The microphone should be fine. I got a little booster for the microphone, so that should be good on YouTube now. So it's been, this is the problem when you sort of do a show yourself and you don't make enough money to have lots of people working for you. You got to sort of figure out everything you're doing, and it's like you're your own tech person, you're your own researcher. It's always a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun. Anyway, so welcome, guys. Yeah, so I'm gonna go through the news from Ukraine, the latest stories today, and then second half of the show, take your guys' questions. What was I gonna say? If you want to ask a question immediately on YouTube, you can ask a super chat question. Feel free to do that. Thank you, Succeed. And I will always get to those. There's the next thing. I see United Kempo just had a little question or a comment I'm going to pull up in a second. And the other thing, thank you, LWD, is please do keep the gifts coming. I really am serious. I do this for a living. I do it full time. And the only way I'm able to afford doing this is with your guys' gifts. So please do keep them coming. They make it possible for me to do this show because they basically help me pay the bills. So Thank you, Jetta and Annie and LWD. All right, so United Kempo has a comment on YouTube. I'm a big fan of your daily updates. During Trump's last presidency, did his government fund training the Ukrainian army? And if so, was it any different before this war started? I don't actually have the details on what Trump did with Ukraine. It was, remember, it was kind of, we know, I don't have the details on it. We do know some stuff was going on because remember, Trump kind of threatened it. Remember, Trump threatened not to proceed with the military sales or whatever they were with Ukraine if he didn't come through and help him get dirt on Joe Biden. I'd like you to do me a favor, though. So stuff was going on. I don't know the details. Now, I know for a fact, right, that we were helping train the Ukrainian military over the last many years since the Russian invasion. I don't have the details on it. I'm sorry. Does anybody actually have the details by chance? Any of you on? Thank you, Ava. On what assistance was happening via the Trump years with Ukraine? Just curious. If anybody knows, feel free to kind of jump in and throw it out there. Yeah, I don't know about that. Sorry about that, but thank you. All right, let's Javelin missiles. Yiping says Javelin missiles ended up, we did sell it to them. Okay, thank you, Josh. Or we did send them. Whether we sold them, I don't know. All right, let me get rolling, guys. So today is day 692 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Ukraine. Over the last night, Ukrainian forces shot down 19 of 20 Shahed-type attack drones launched by Russia. Nonetheless, the Russians did cause significant damage. 17 people were injured after the Russians fired 2 missiles at Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine, hitting an apartment building and a medical center. The United Nations just reported that there's been a sharp increase in civilian casualties in Ukraine, I believe since December. This should not surprise us because the Russians have been intentionally, well, 2 things. The Russians always intentionally target civilians. It's what they do. I don't say that, sorry, I'm adjusting my camera here for you guys on YouTube. I don't say that flippantly. The Russians, it literally is what the Russians do. They, oops. Here we go. Sorry, guys. I'm like playing with my camera a little bit here. That's pretty good. The Russians intentionally target. They've done this for years, and we've known this for years. It is well established. Talk to anybody who's a military expert. They will tell you part of Russia's strategy is to target civilians. They think that by killing civilians, they are going to break the morale of the country, break the morale of the citizens, break the morale of the government. Actually, Israel's a little bit different. No, it's not the same thing. And it's important to actually draw the distinction because I think too many people don't really approach the issue seriously enough. Thank you, Lamb Chop. And it's not the same thing. And it's important to actually point out the difference because there is a big it can be very wrong, by the way. It can be a war crime to kill civilians in warfare. First of all, it can be okay to kill civilians during a war. That's the first point. Sometimes it's not a crime at all. Civilians die in war. That's what happens. So sometimes civilians die. It's not a big deal. I mean, big deal for the civilians, but you get what I'm saying. Civilians will die. 2, sometimes civilians are killed through negligence. Sometimes civilians are killed because the power that be that's fighting, thank you, Cheryl, just doesn't really care enough as to whether they kill civilians. That could very well be a war crime. That very well is a war crime. So you could accuse Israel of a war crime if you want, in terms of being far too flippant about the deaths of civilians in Gaza. That would be the argument. But what Russia's doing is intentionally targeting civilians, which is genocide. Well, it's not just genocide, actually. Intentionally targeting civilians is also a war crime. It's not necessarily genocide. Thank you, LWD. But I would argue that, first of all, there is a big moral difference. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Dark Phoenix. I haven't seen that one before. That's very cool. There's a big moral difference. Thank you, Cheryl. Between, a big moral difference, though both are immoral, between not caring if you kill civilians and going and slaughtering as many civilians as you can. Morally, slaughtering all of them on purpose is a lot worse than being negligent. The U.S., by the way, law recognizes this as well. If you are negligently harm someone, it is a much lesser penalty than you intentionally harm someone. Now, you could still have a pretty good penalty if you negligently kill someone, but going on an assassin's raid to kill someone, very much bigger punishment. But doesn't mean that if you're negligent that it's not a crime. Doesn't mean if you're negligent it's not a war crime. What Russia's doing is not just negligently killing Ukrainians. Russia's war policy, unlike Israel's, for years has been to kill civilians. That's the entire point. Thank you, LWD. They don't try to blow up they often don't try to blow up the military. They want to blow up civilians. They've done it in Syria, and they've done it in Ukraine in addition to other places. It's what Russia does. Israel, totally different argument. And again, you could say Israel is a war crime if you want. That's a different question. But it's different, and I think it's important when discussing, actually, honestly, it's important when discussing any issue in the world to get it right. Thank you, Lori, and to be precise. And I am a lawyer, which is also part of the reason I believe in being very precise about things that I say. But yeah, the Russian approach is different than the Israeli approach. Again, doesn't mean they're both not war crimes, but you got to be smart about it, and that's what the show is about. So, all right, let's keep going. 17 people were injured after the Russians fired the missiles at an apartment building and a medical center. Mods, Ashley, do have some fun with the people on TikTok, please. It said, more than 100 civilians were killed by Russians' missiles and drone attacks since December. And this, as I said, in Russia's case, is intentional. Russia is not accidentally killing civilians. Russia's killing them on purpose, which is actually a big difference than what Israel's doing, even though, as I said, Israel could be a war crime. Negligently killing people is a war crime as well. But it's a difference, and it's important being a difference. Oh, it means a lot. Biden met congressional leaders at the White House today, or his meeting, actually. I'm not sure what time the meeting is. We really got no report on it other than in terms of trying to finance a new Ukrainian aid package. The only report we've really had is that the Senate now says they're going to move ahead next week with trying to pass something. The House is not. House Republicans said again today, the Republican Speaker of the House, thank you, LWD, for the TikTok gift. Oh, that's the postcard one. That's always fun because it's a different postcard each time. But the House Republicans said again today that they're not passing Ukraine aid until something gets passed on the border in terms of beefing up the border with Mexico. Thank you, Wayne. But they also made clear they're not really confident much is going to happen with regards to the border with Mexico either. This is a problem. House Republicans don't really have an incentive to pass a border compromise with Biden because, and I've said this before, both political parties are this way. If the president in power is not your guy, so in this case, right, with the Republicans, it's Biden, he's the Democrat, right? But even if it were the Democrats with Trump, you generally don't want to help your guy do well in the year of the reelection. You just don't want him to have a feather in his hat that he can point to and say, look, thank you, Vicky. Look at how I addressed the border issue. Look at what a great job I did, right? You don't want to be able to say that. And the Senate Republicans, interestingly, are willing to reach a border deal, and they're willing to reach a deal on Ukraine because the Senate Republicans actually believe that supporting Ukraine is important to America's national security. House Republicans don't. Some of them do, but they don't have any backbone. The House Republicans who do, ironically, are the chairmen of the top committees. I believe it's the Foreign Affairs Committee, and it might be the Intelligence Committee. I'm trying to remember the other guy. I think it is. Who are the staunch Ukraine supporters, but typical with Republicans, they don't do anything about it. It's actually very Democrat in a way, where they're super defenders of Ukraine, but they're not willing to defend Ukraine. So they let the MAGA crowd, which is running the House currently, basically dictate what's happening, which is we're not going to help Ukraine. So I'm not hopeful. I'm really not. Let's see what happens. But I'm not hopeful at all about what's coming up with funding. Now, a lot of actually good news out of Europe in terms of funding for the war. So let me go through some of this right now. German Chancellor Scholz said yesterday in a call with Biden that Berlin is going to unilaterally provide Ukraine with over 7 billion euros in security assistance and humanitarian support next year, or this year, I should say, this coming year. 7 billion euros is around the same in dollars, around $7 billion. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal from Berlin, and that's just this year, which is great. The French and the European Union officials got a little bit upset because they said that Germany's kind of freelancing, and rather than working, Ukraine aid through the European Union, they're doing it on their own. Now, if you're European Union, I guess I can see why, right? Having said that, the EU has had a lot of problems getting aid packages passed for Ukraine, especially this most recent aid package the Hungarians are holding up. And That's why the Germans, I think, are moving ahead on their own and saying, fine, we're just going to make our own pledges. So, I get why the European Union wants to keep it a much more coordinated approach amongst the EU, but at the same time, especially with the U.S. falling short on aid, I think it's really important for the other European countries to step forward and say that they're going to be providing funding. A little bit more here. Let me see. There's a lot of countries step forward today. France. Okay, good news from France. France traditionally has been really bad about providing aid to Ukraine. France talks a big game, but they're one of the lowest. Germany, actually, here are the numbers again from the Kiel Institute. Germany was the second highest donor last year to Ukraine after the U.S. Germany provided 17 billion euros. Again, the euro's almost equal to the dollar, so easy just to think of it that way. Euro is dollar. So 17 billion euros, followed by the UK with 6.6 billion euros. The Nordic and Eastern European countries were next. France only contributed 0.54 billion. In other words, 540 million euros France contributed. Germany put 17 billion. France 540 million. Okay, France has done a terrible job. The Brits have done a great job. The Nordic countries, the Baltic countries, a lot of countries have done a great job. The French have not. Spanish have not as well. And I think Italy might not have been in great shape either, to be honest. Well, the French are about to sign. They reached in a deal with Ukraine to sign a bilateral security agreement, which will, I guess, detail aid that will be coming to Ukraine over the next year. One good announcement from this is the French president announced that they will be delivering 40 Scalp long-range missiles to Ukraine and several hundred bombs. Now, these Scalp missiles are important because they are the same missiles, more or less, that the Brits are providing. The Brits are providing they're called Storm Shadow. The French ones are called Scalp. And they were jointly produced by both countries. Each is a little bit different, but France is going to provide 40 now additional Scalp missiles, which is a good deal because they're very good missiles. They can do a lot of damage. So that's good. Hopefully even more, but that's good news. Germany has handed over ammunition for Leopard 1 tanks, as well as helmets, drones, and vehicles to Ukraine. Bloomberg, the news source, announces that Latvia's defense chief says Latvia is making progress in assembling a coalition of almost 20 countries to arm Ukrainian forces with thousands of new unmanned aerial vehicles, in other words, drones. Ukraine set out to produce, according to Bloomberg, 1 million modified first-person view UAVs for use on the battlefield next year, as well as more than 10,000 mid-range and 1,000 long-range strike drones. France, another one from France. France also announced today that they're producing 78 Caesar self-propelled howitzers for Ukraine. It was a lot of news today, actually. I mean, Ukraine is still in serious need. Casey. Yeah, Ash, Casey's a troll. I might as well bring this up again, too. We've got somebody on. We occasionally get these trolls on Twitter, and I think sometimes I like to respond to them because they bring up Russian talking points that have been adopted by, frankly, a lot of the MAGA crowd. I mean, a lot of the sort of the right-wing Republicans, not right-wing Republicans, because the MAGA crowd aren't right-wing Republicans. It's different, but they claiming Ukraine's corrupt is one of their favorite talking points. And interestingly enough, and any of you can go out and Google this, if you Google International Corruption Index, Ukraine, Russia, you'll pull up there. I forget what it's called, but there's like the corruption index is done every year by a very respected organization. And you will find that Ukraine, that was my dog jumping up on the. Yep, my dog is playing with her bed in the background again. I don't know if you can. Oh, you may not be able to see. I can see just a little bit of the. There you go, the head. You guys can see the head. The YouTubers can see her head where my thumb is. The rest of you, I don't know if you can see it right around there. Yeah, right there. She was kind of digging into her bed. I always love when she does that when I'm talking, and I get a little Sasha bomb in the background. But if you look at the corruption index, you will see that Russia, in fact, is a much more corrupt country than Ukraine. So if we are debating who to support in this war based on corruption, you would support Ukraine. The second point is, thank you, adventurers, we are fortunate that we have as much as we have some real problems in this country in terms of our politics right now. because of Trump and the MAGA movement. We are very fortunate that we generally do not have a corrupt country. I think Trump was a very corrupt man. He is. And he ran a very corrupt presidency. But generally speaking, we do not have a very corrupt country overall, although our systems are very fragile. And therefore, when looking at the rest of the world, saying that, well, that country is a lot more corrupt than we are, thank you, Mustard, so we shouldn't support them, means we're pretty much not going to support anybody, because there aren't that many countries that are less corrupt than us. Thank you, Survey. So in a general sense, I mean, again, Trump showed that there's a lot of corruption that's possible, that the rule of law, sadly, in our country is very weak in some ways against a strong president. But nonetheless, generally speaking, most countries in the world that are going to get invaded, per se, are going to be more corrupt than the United States. So the question becomes, do we help them or not help them? Well, it depends on your national interest. National interest has nothing to do with corruption. Foreign policy overall, when you are making decisions on national security or foreign policy, the decision should be made on the best interest for your country. Now, some people on the left don't like this sometimes because they say, oh, you're not going in because you... My favorite is when people say, oh, America didn't go into that war or do this good thing for the world because they care. Thank you, Critter. They did it because it's in America's best interest to do it. Thank you, Timothy and Pam. And I go, well, of course, that's why we did it. That's why any country does anything, right? You only get involved in the world and do stuff when it's in your national interest. Stuff that isn't in your national interest, you generally let slide, right? But if something's big enough and important enough, and by the way, there's no choice in a democracy. I mean, you can't go, thank you, Liv, you can't go and get involved in a bunch of stuff around the world that literally has nothing to do with your country and has no benefit whatsoever. I mean, it's just, at some point, people are going to get tired of you doing that. So with Ukraine, for example, or any war, World War I, World War II, I am less sympathetic, thank you, Pam, to the sort of ethical argument or whatever of, gosh, they're our friends, shouldn't we help them? I mean, sure, I appreciate that argument. Thank you, Critter. But the real question for whether America goes to war or any country is it in our benefit to go to war? Is it in our detriment to not go to war? That has nothing to do with how corrupt your country is. If we believe that Russia attacking Ukraine and Russia winning in Ukraine, that Russia taking control of Ukraine, that Russia eliminating the country, thank you, Chicker, or Jay, yep, thank you, Jay, for those, and Critter as well. If we believe that Russia conquering all of Ukraine is going to be devastating for American national interests because it risks a war in Europe, a larger war in Europe that America will have to get involved in. Thank you, Florian. It doesn't matter if Ukraine's corrupt. Thank you, Cheryl. Think about it, right? And again, go with my logic here. If you believe, let's just assume, forget Ukraine, country, make up, I'm trying to make up a country here. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Chazak. Autumn leaves. Perfect. The country Autumn, an imaginary country Autumn, gets invaded by the Russians. And if the Russians destroy this country and take over, they will move on and take over the rest of Europe. They will guarantee go to war in Europe. Thank you, Vicky. And it's a war that America will have to get involved in. We don't want that. We want to stop that because we don't want to get involved in a war with our own troops. Therefore, of course, we should get involved to stop it now. If somebody were to say, well, I know America should get involved in the war because if we don't, it'll be a world war. But the people we're helping are kind of corrupt. And we don't like helping corrupt people. So let's not help the corrupt people and cause a world war. I mean, that's the issue, is national security is decided by what is the best interest of your country. And BS arguments about, well, Ukraine's kind of corrupt doesn't meet the test. It doesn't matter. Ukraine isn't that corrupt, for starters. It's not. It's a lie. And it is a Russian talking point. It is literally a Russian propaganda point. Thank you, Ernie. But it also doesn't matter. What matters is how dangerous is this, what Russia is doing, and does it risk getting America into a larger war, what Russia is doing? Yes, it does. And if it does, then we have to get in to stop it. It's like cancer surgery. You either need the surgery or you don't. it doesn't matter if you say, well, thank you, Marie. Well, there's a history with those cancer treatments of them overcharging, and there's a lot of corruption with that treatment. I don't like it because historically they've charged people too much. No, the decision is, are you going to die or not? And is the treatment going to help or not? You don't say, well, in principle, I'm just not going under the knife, right? It's not the way it works. Thank you, Vicky. Anyway, thank you, Foodie and Vicky, both for the gifts there. And Marie. Oh, and Liv. I see a lot of gifts there today. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Let's move on here. European Union. So this was interesting. So I was talking earlier about the European Union aid package and how they've got a 50 billion euro aid package, $50 billion for Ukraine that they're trying to get passed. I believe the package is for 5 years. Hungary is being a PITA and saying, no, we're not going to let you do it. And the European Union President, Ursula I can never pronounce her name, von der Leyen, came out today, thank you, Annette, and said that the European Union will approve the Ukraine aid package with or without Hungary's approval, because Hungary's been saying no, and it has to be unanimous. I'm not quite sure how that works in terms of European Union policy. I'm not sure how you get to pass the program if Hungary says no, but it was very interesting she said that. Genocide. Yeah, since I was talking about genocide earlier, I'm going to read you a little bit of something. So speaking of genocide, and as I said, I'm probably because I'm a lawyer, but also this is something I've always believed in. I don't like people who throw around terms like genocide lightly because it denigrates and it diminishes actual genocide. It's not genocide because you don't like the guys that are bombing. It's not genocide because a lot of civilians are getting killed. It's a war crime, perhaps. Genocide has a very specific meaning. Genocide is when you are literally trying to wipe out a culture or a people. It is, you literally say, we're going to kill them all. And that we are bombing to kill them all. We are bombing to force all of them out of here. And we're going to take over the land. That potentially is genocide. I mean, that definitely is genocide. And by the way, there have been some Israeli cabinet members that have made horrific comments that are borderline genocidal. Like I think 2 or 3 of them. And they should have been kicked out of the cabinet. And Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, didn't do it. So that's an important point to mention. But it is not genocide just because you kill a lot of civilians. It's just not. That's not the definition of genocide. Well, what is genocide is what the Russians just said today. Dmitry Medvedev, who is a former Russian president, he used to be a big sort of liberal, moderate guy. He was the Russian that the West loved, 20 years ago. He was the guy that was the friend of the West and was going to modernize everything else. He's gone crazy since. It is believed, I think, by intelligence sources and others that he's an alcoholic, but that he's become not he's an alcoholic, but like he has a serious problem and it's affecting him mentally, basically. He is the one who constantly is talking about nuking the West and saying, we're going to nuke you, we're going to do this. And you never hear Putin say it, but you hear Medvedev say it. He's crazy. But he's the former Russian president and he still has a very senior job in the administration. So, he's got some say. Anyway, listen to the statement he put out today in Russian, and then I had Google translate it. So hang on a sec. Listen to this. The existence of Ukraine is morally dangerous for Ukrainians. His whole premise he's going to go with here is that Ukraine's existence is dangerous for Ukraine, right? And I mean, like, listen, again, the genocidal nature of this, that basically Ukraine needs to be eliminated, like wiped from the map, but that's in order to protect Ukrainians themselves. Okay, listen to this. And I don't mean only the current state. I'm talking about absolutely any Ukraine. So any Ukraine existing at all is a threat to Ukrainians. Why? The presence of an independent state in historical Russian territories will now be permanent reason for the resumption of hostilities. He's talking about the fact that the Russians consider Ukraine to be Russian. They consider it to be historically Russian territories. Actually, historically, it's the Soviet Union territories, which makes Russia as much a part of Ukraine as Ukraine a part of Russia, if you want to play that game, right? They were all part of the same country for 70 years, the same dictatorship for 70 years. But that doesn't make Russia first among equals, really, right? Russia likes to play that game. Russia is also using the German argument from World War II, which is, those lands are really our lands next door. Those people are really our people, and that's why we should invade and take over the country next door. So there's a lot of that going on here. He goes on. No matter who is at the helm of the cancerous growth under the name of Ukraine, this will not add legitimacy to his rule and the legal viability of the country itself. Okay. I'm gonna keep reading here, but listen to this. So he says in the first part, war will happen again if Ukraine continues to exist, he warns. He says Ukraine is a cancer. He says Ukraine is not legally viable. So they're also saying it can't exist as a state legally. And therefore the likelihood of a new fight will persist indefinitely. So he's threatening again to go to war even if they reach a peace right now. Moreover, there is a 100% probability of a new conflict. He means if peace were agreed to right now, 100% probability in the future. No matter what security papers the West signs with the puppet Kyiv regime, neither the Ukrainian Association will prevent it with the EU or even the entry of this artificial country, again, genocidal language, artificial country, into NATO. This could happen in 10 or 50 years. He's saying that Russia is going to go in and eliminate Ukraine, that there is a 100% chance that Russia will invade again, even if they reach a peace deal right now, and that Russia has to go in because Ukraine isn't real, it doesn't exist, it is historically Russian, and its mere existence poses such an existential threat to Russia that Russia will have to wipe it off the map. That, my friends, is genocide. And coming from the former president of the country, that is genocide. I mean, it's crazy, but it really goes, I don't just raise it to sort of point out, the nastiness of the Russians. I raise it to point out how dangerous of a situation we're in. This is why a lot of us think the Russians must be taken on now. This is why we think Ukraine must beat the Russians. This is why we think all of these crazy Elon Musk, Ukraine experts who don't know anything, who say, oh, we need a peace deal now. Ukraine should just give up land. Unless Ukraine gives up the entire country, Russia isn't going to stop. Russia is coming back. They're going to come back for the rest of the country if peace is signed now. And Medvedev just said the exact same thing. A little bit of news on the border. Speaking of borders, Russia's border. You may know, sip of water, that Ukraine was not Ukraine, Finland. Finland shut down its border with Russia. It did it because the Russians were sending people across the border, migrants from Syria, Somalia, other countries, and doing it as I'm not sure what to call it. I'm trying to find a word that isn't offensive to the migrants, but they're taking these people, letting them into Russia, busing them to the Finnish border, and then just throwing them into Finland. So that basically Finland will get all of these immigrants from people around the world that they don't necessarily want, causing social strife. Well, Finland came today and said that the Russians are also including spies among the asylum seekers. Norway's intelligence has alleged something similar. And that basically the Russians are either paying them or coercing them, some of these asylum seekers, which is something that we're not necessarily surprised about. This is something that we knew. This is good news. Russian companies have been increasingly leaving Cyprus as Western sanctions impact their ability to operate. This was written in the Russian publication Kommersant. Railway tracks. Here's a great story. Railway tracks in three different Russian regions have been targeted in recent sabotage attacks, according to Ukraine's military intelligence. So the Ukrainians are still doing more sabotage inside Russia. This story is getting very interesting because there have been a lot of fires lately. Remember at the beginning of the war, there were sort of nonstop fires in Russia, and we were always kind of like, what's going on with this? Well, there have been a lot of fires in Russia recently. The Amazon of Russia, which isn't Amazon, but meaning the Amazon-like company of Russia, just caught on one of their warehouses, I think in St. Petersburg, caught on fire. Massive fire. Don't quite know what it was. It could have been some people upset about the Russians drafting migrants. It's hard to know. Suspicious. In this case, 3 different railway tracks get blown up. That's the Ukrainians. Now, it could be the Ukrainians working with Russian resistance, absolutely, but very good news. And mind you, railway tracks matter because railway tracks are used for logistics, for sending aid to the military right from across the country. So it's a big deal. British Ministry of Defense. So this was interesting too. That's what I mean. There was a lot of news. There wasn't a lot of war news in the sense of the war advancing, but there's a lot of news today that's just interesting news about the war. This is another one. The British Ministry of Defense weighed in on the Russians losing that A-50 AWACS jet the other day, or fighter, not jet, but airplane. The Russians lost 2 planes, I think it was this weekend, maybe Saturday, and they were flying over the Sea of Azov in southern Ukraine, down here. Now the Russians, remember, the Russians control all of this, so their planes were flying around here, and the Ukrainians shot 2 of them down. One of them was an AWACS plane. The AWACS are those big, for the Americans, I don't know if it still is. It used to be a 747. For the Russians, it's, I forget, it's one of their planes, you know what I mean? But it used to be a 747, so imagine a huge plane with a thing sticking out the top and then a big UFO disc on top, like a pancake, right? That disc rotates. It's a huge radar. It can see hundreds of miles. It's used to coordinate fighter jets fighting, all sorts of stuff. It's an A-50, okay? Well, the Ukrainians shot the thing out of the sky. Thank you, SV, for the TikTok Galaxy gift. The Ukrainians shot it out of the sky, destroyed it. As somebody mentioned yesterday, and I went and checked it out, it is an AWACS, yeah, yep. AWACS type plane. The Ukrainians didn't just, thank you, Tom. The Ukrainians didn't just blow up the plane, which is a huge deal. The Russians, in principle, only have, I think, 8 or 9 of these left. I was just reading today that, in fact, they may only have 2. Thank you, Jonathan, because the other 6 or so are in urgent need of repairs. And thank you, Liv, as well. Oh, what a cool last name. Bjorn's daughter. Oh, I've seen your name. I remember, unless I'm wrong, I remember you from months ago because I remember I only recently learned, quick tangent, guys, but this is an interesting tangent. I like watching a lot of the shows on Netflix about Vikings. They're sort of the historical dramas. They're really interesting. And I never knew that in Swedish or Norwegian, in Scandinavian countries, we always knew about sun. Like, I'm trying to think, what would the, I'm trying to think of a Swedish name that ends in son, right? I'm spacing out right now. But the last name ends in son. Johnson, but is Johnson Swedish? Johnson's not Swedish. Eriksson would be, I would be thinking. Eriksson, right? Eriksson, son of Eric. I never knew that for the girls, they did daughter. So the name would be, Eric's daughter. And I never knew. It never knew. So somebody right now, Liv just gave a quick gift, and I noticed Liv's last name is Bjorn's daughter, right? Like daughter of Bjorn, I'm assuming. But it's funny because Johnson is Swedish. I never knew that. I just never realized that daughter was an ending as well. But like I said, Bjorn's daughter of Bjorn. Very interesting. Yeah. I find that fascinating. Like I said, I learned it watching my my Viking shows, like I said, on Netflix. But isn't it funny? In all these years, because I also have never met anybody with the last name daughter. Anyway, very interesting. But possibly you or somebody else. Thank you, Elizabeth. We had this discussion months ago because I remember seeing the name and going, ooh. Oh, Iceland does it that way too? Oh, interesting. Learned it on the Ancestry show? Yeah. Johansson? Well, Johansson makes sense, I guess, because of Johan. Right. Which I used to say Johan until my Swedish friends taught me it's Johan or something similar. Hansbotter? Oh, that's interesting. All right, let me keep going here. So the A-50. So the Ukrainians blow up this Russian AWACS. The Russians, in fact, may only have 2 useful ones to use. They have 8 or 9 of them, but 6 of them, reportedly I read today, may actually be in need of repairs. Well, they also destroyed another surveillance plane. I was reading a really good story today, and I didn't have time to copy it down, but I can tell you, I can tell you a little bit about it. That this is from Forbes, actually. Forbes reports that it's possible the Ukrainians tricked the Russians into Basically, it was a trap they set for this AWACS plane, this incredible Russian surveillance plane. Now, mind you, I should tell you first, the surveillance plane is used, like I said, to track hundreds of miles away. Airplanes. I think it can even track some things on the ground. But it's very dangerous for the Ukrainians, this plane, right? For helping the Russian fighters go. Well, the Ukrainians this weekend, I guess, go into Crimea. Again, all of this controlled by Russia. They go into Crimea and they bomb some Russian radar. I forget what kind of radar, but they bombed some Russian radar in Crimea. That made part of Crimea blind. It made it so that the Russians went, holy cow. The Ukrainians have been doing this for a while. But the recent radar they bombed made part of the area of Crimea blind for the Russians, where they wouldn't be able to see planes coming in, and the Russians got worried. And they said, we don't want the Ukrainians. Maybe the Ukrainians are planning an attack, right? They just blacked out. I don't know where it was in Crimea. Let's say it was here. They just blacked out a portion of Crimea of our radar coverage. That must be where the Ukrainians are going to attack soon. So the Russians said, you know what? We better move one of our AWACS planes, one of our radar planes, into the area around here so we can have a better eye on the part of Crimea the Ukrainians just blinded. So the Russians moved the AWACS plane over here, and what did the Ukrainians do? They got another, they think maybe they used an S-300 system that the Ukrainians used, basically a cheaper missile system that doesn't work as well, to light up the plane, to figure out exactly where it was, what its trajectory was, what its path was, and the Russians didn't perceive it as a threat. They sent, this is just a theory, but they sent the trajectory to the Patriot missile system that the Ukrainians had in the area. The Ukrainians had the Patriot missile in the area. They had it hidden. They had it turned off so the Russians wouldn't be able to see it. Well, the Patriot missile receives the telemetry on the plane. It's still off. At the last minute, they turn the system on, and within a few seconds, attack the planes and blow them up. And the Russians didn't have time to even see it. Now, this is just a theory. But what's interesting about it is quite possible and brilliant, if the Ukrainians did this, that they planned the whole thing. Oh, thank you, Dennis. Oh, and since we're talking about airplane, a very nice gift, by the way, too. Thank you, Dennis, so much for that. And very cool gift and very topical, too, with the airplanes. Very cool if the Now, again, we don't know if the Ukrainians did it. It was one defense expert talking to Forbes today, but very interesting. Very interesting if they did that, if they sucker punched the Russians into doing it. But as we said, it's now going to cause a problem for the Russians going forward because it's going to be, well, first of all, not only do they have fewer of these planes to use, but also this area of Crimea is still blind. So they're going to have a problem with that again. Oh, Martin, that's a good point, Martin. Martin says they did this to the bomber jets a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, there were the one day there were like 5 jets or bombers that the Ukrainians shot down. Remember, at first it was like 2. There were 2 within an hour, like in the noon hour. And then by the end of the day, there were 4 or 5 that got shot down. And remember, we were talking about it because we were saying, okay, what happened? What happened that the Ukrainians were able to shoot down like 4 or 5 planes, boom, at the same time, basically? And we said they must have done something. There must have been a trick. It must have been a weapon system that the Russians didn't know was there. And actually, by the way, the Ukrainians, remember the sinking of the Moskva, the warship, the Russian warship Go F Yourself warship that the Ukrainians sank at the beginning of the war? Well, the Ukrainians used one of their own cruise missiles, a Neptune cruise missile on it, but you remember they also destroyed the Moskva by tricking it as well. The radar system on the Moskva, on the ship, the Russian ship, was 180-degree radar. It wasn't 360. So it wasn't like the radar could see it all around at once. It could only see, imagine, 180. So my vision here. And it would have to turn around or whatever to see the other way. So it was looking one way. Well, what they did was they flew drones, I believe it was drones either in the air or sea. I don't remember which, but they flew drones at the Moskva. But okay, more or less. Moskva, I'm trying to remember exactly. I want to say it might have been down here, more or less, okay? The Ukrainians, or maybe it was down here. The Ukrainians flew the drones from like over here so that the Moskva's radar is looking down here. And the radar can only see 180, so it's only able to see this area. So they flew drones at it here, and while it's busy looking south, what do the Ukrainians do? They fire the cruise missile from up here. So the Russians couldn't see it, but they totally tricked the Russians, and it was a total scam. And it got submarined, as Malavray says, exactly. Really interesting. I mean, just really interesting. In any case, all right. A50. I'm just seeing here. Oh, last story, just because it was kind of funny and weird. Tinder, the US-based dating app, announced it is exiting the Belarusian market starting February 15th. They did not explain why. Belarus, as you know, is the Putin ally run by a dictator just northwest of Ukraine. It's not clear at all what's going on. It's not clear why, Tinder is doing this. I just think it's funny in a way, but it's also weird. And leaving a dictatorship, it could be sanctions. And finally, they got into trouble with the sanctions somehow. It could be something dealing with the dictatorship and data. Maybe they were trying to grab, data. It could be, I don't know whether gay people use Tinder much, but if you got gay people on Tinder, that could be a threat as well. That was a problem before with Grindr, which is a gay sort of dating meetup app here, not here in the States, it's worldwide. Anyway, very weird, very weird. All right, guys, that is it for the news. We can open it up to Q&A and everything else, your comments. I will once again show you a couple of our auction items. We have auctions. Okay, tonight, let's do questions for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then let's go over to Discord, because we haven't done Discord forever. We have a Discord community. We'll go and hang out there afterwards. It's discord.aravosis.com, or if you've got Discord, just search for my last name, Aravosis. You can find it sort of on any of these systems. And we just go and hang out, and it's kind of fun, actually. It's a nice hangout. But let me show you over the Discord, we've got auctions we run, and the auctions are to help the Ukrainians. Basically, 50% of our auctions monies go to Ukraine for humanitarian aid, for military aid. The other 50% goes to support my work because I do this full time. And the only way I'm able to do this is with your guys' donations, because that's how I pay the bills, quite literally. There's no money coming in otherwise. I get money from your membership subscriptions on YouTube, on TikTok, money from the gifts you give me, money direct PayPal, Venmo, which you can access at aravosis.com there. You guys can access it via my profile on TikTok. Just click the Linktree link. You'll find my Venmo, my PayPal. But anyway, so the auctions actually help in that regard. But show you a couple of the auction things. My favorite piece of late, which is actually doing very well, this is really neat. This is, I showed you guys this yesterday, but I love it. And it's up for another week. This is the top part of a Russian periscope from a captured T-72 tank. Now, the periscope is about this big. And again, periscope, you're looking down here. It goes up and looks out of the tank. It's super hard, as you can see. Thank you, Jolie. Thank you, Jolie, for that. Super hard, as you can tell. What I like about this is the mirror because, I'm dropping my thing. I've got a Ukrainian patch that I'm also auctioning off separately, but I was thinking, like, if you put the patch here, you have kind of a cool little thing. Phone support, that's funny. I don't know if phone support would work. Oh, phone support here, that's funny. It could be. I just think this is cool because it's a great to sit on a desk. Like I said, look at my fingers too. You can put anything underneath it, and all of a sudden, you've got like cool stuff underneath. Anyway, this one's very new. I had a whole one at one point. Vlad sent me the entire periscope from the tank, and the Ukrainian customs took it. And Vlad's convinced that the Ukraine. Now here we do have corruption. Vlad, he told me, they took it because they want to sell it. He goes, there's no way that thing's illegal. No way. But so that was kind of obnoxious. Yeah, you can use you can use it to read too. You could use it to look around corners. Anyway, but that one's very cool. The second thing, we showed this yesterday. One of our wonderful members here, Larissa, Wild Hunt Corsetry is her name. She may be on today. She's on very often. And Larissa made this. I thought it was a bracelet. It's not a bracelet. This is pretty cool. Oh, she is here today. This is very cool. She made this by hand. She is a Ukrainian American. She does these things based on traditional Ukrainian jewelry and designs. This is called a cotillion. It is a copy of one that is in the museum in Canada. And it was made, they still make them, but it was made, this is an old one. This is a new one she made. You can see the beads, but it was made, the original that she copied, as a good luck charm that women made and gave to their boyfriends or husbands in the military. And they would take it and they would affix it to their lapel. And you will see, and she's got a video up that we actually put in the auction, in the comments. She put a video, it's so cool, making this, but she put pictures of the Ukrainian soldiers wearing these things. And you see the old photos, and you don't even notice it unless you look carefully. You go, oh my God, he does have something from his lapel. So very cool. I thought it was a bracelet. I was like, it's a bracelet, whatever. Now I think it's totally cool. And like this, I think would be neat from like the rear view window, a mirror in your car. Personally, I don't know if that cheapens it. I think it would be cool. But anyway, to me, it's much cooler now that I know what it actually is. So that's neat. And the final thing, I mean, we've got like 8 different things. The final thing is, this is really cool. This is, it's called trench art. Basically, trench art is when you take things from war and you turn it into art. And the Ukrainians have been taking these old shells and making what I like to think are candle holders. They could be anything. But you can see they're metal, and it's the Ukrainian trident and an angel. And these are so freaking cool. These are from, I think, a BMP-30, we said. I've got it in the description. They're from Bakhmut, which was neat. The battle in Bakhmut, that's been the big battle for like a year and a half now. But these are nice, too, because they stand perfectly. And they're really pretty. And again, for a candle, this would be totally cool with a candle. These do very, I've got a few more I bought from Ukraine. These do very well. Anyway, check it out, guys. Like I said, we've got really neat auction stuff. And the auctions benefit me and they benefit Ukraine. I do think it would be a really neat candle holder, wouldn't it? Very cool. Anyway, all right, let's jump in. So Terry Davis was asking, should the Secretary Austin resign or not? Kind of weird. Very weird. So, and Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, yeah. So U.S. Secretary of Defense Austin had prostate cancer. He went for surgery, didn't tell anyone. No, excuse me. I shouldn't say he didn't tell anyone. I don't know whether the initial surgery he told anyone or not. That I don't know. But he had an emergency, I believe, went to the hospital. I'm trying to remember the whole story here, guys, because there were 2 different things. One was the initial surgery, and then there were complications from the surgery. I think he got an infection or whatever it was, complications. We find out they call 911, which is the emergency services in America, okay? He gets an infection. They have to call 911. So the infection is so bad that they have to call an ambulance, okay? So it's not just, oh, he got an infection, instead I'm going to the hospital to be checked out. They called 911. The person who calls 911 says they're calling for the Secretary of Defense, and we need a little discretion here. Please don't play the sirens. He goes to the hospital. For 4 days, he's in the hospital, and he has told nobody. He has not told the president. He's not told anybody. He just didn't tell anybody that this was happening. He's a Secretary of Defense, and mind you, you're in enough pain and you're sick enough that you called an ambulance. I didn't know that until today. That really bothers me, right? It's one thing to be sick and you go to the hospital. You still should tell the president or notify somebody. But to be sick enough that you call an ambulance is usually problematic. Well, you know, there's been a lot of discussion as to whether he should resign. I mean, I don't know. I put it this way. I think it's obnoxious what he did. I think it's weird what he did. I don't know how good a Secretary of Defense he is. If he's a good Secretary of Defense, I'd rather not have him step down otherwise, because we have a lot of stuff going on right now. We've got the war in Ukraine. We've got the war between Israel and Gaza. We've got, the Chinese weirdness with Taiwan on the board. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff going on right now. I don't know that I want the Pentagon turning over. That's the thing, I don't know. Stargaze Flower says, I thought your medical records are private. You shouldn't have to resign. Yes, but it doesn't mean you have to go public to the world, but you do have to go public to the president. He has a job that is in the public trust. He is the Secretary of Defense. He's in charge of us at war. And, we're kind of at war in Ukraine. I mean, we like to say we're not. We kind of are, even though our troops aren't there, so it's a very safe war. Nonetheless, we're kind of at war in Ukraine. One of our allies is at war in the Middle East. There's a lot going on. The Secretary of Defense shouldn't just disappear for 4 days to the hospital in an emergency and not tell the White House. He's got to tell the White House. I mean, also, part of the problem is you don't want that story getting out there. I mean, what America's allies find out the Secretary of Defense is sick, or America's enemies. It's just, politically, now mind you, he's a general. and maybe he's not thinking politically. But I would, if I were advising him when he had to go to the hospital, I would have said, okay, look, you got to go to the hospital. You're the Secretary of Defense. We called an ambulance. Someone thinks that's really cool that the Secretary of Defense called an ambulance. Someone thinks it's really cool that the Secretary of Defense just got admitted to their hospital. They're going to tell people. And if that word gets out to the press that the Secretary of Defense got, Medvedev, not Medvedev, but an ambulance to the hospital, it's going to make the news. And if Biden finds out via CNN that the Secretary of Defense is in the hospital with an emergency and didn't tell anybody, your butt is gone, right? So you've got to have politics involved. You've got to have politics involved. Well, no, I would say with your boss, you don't have to tell your boss. Your boss, you could call in sick. If you had to go to the hospital, you could call in sick for 3 days if you want to, right? If you had a regular boss. But as the Secretary of Defense, you've got to tell the president. It's not, it doesn't matter. Then you better be unconscious. Fair enough. Well, maybe he was unconscious though. Now that's not a horrible argument. One and only Leonard is saying, wonder if he was incapacitated. That's not a horrible argument. What if those, I don't know. Does anybody remember from the stories? I don't remember well enough those several days in the hospital. If they called an ambulance, he was really sick. Was he so sick that he was unable to do anything? Was he unable to call the president, to call the White House? Then it's a matter of his deputies or somebody else not telling anybody, or his family, whoever called, right? So that's an interesting point. No, just speculating, but it's a very good question that we need answered before we blame him. I agree on that, though. I agree on that. We'd have to know if he was capable. Nonetheless, the whole thing kind of reeks. The whole thing is just not great. It looks like it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. So, in any case, yeah, it's bad. But again, I'd rather not have him resign if he's a good Secretary of Defense, because I feel like it's really bad. I don't feel like it's resign worthy. I just feel like it's really bad. You know what I mean? That's the issue. And if it becomes a huge scandal, he may have to resign. Like if the Republicans jump on it and it becomes a huge scandal, then it starts distracting from the president and all of that. That could be a problem, right? But I feel like it's short of resignation. But I mean, I don't know much about the guy. I mean, I was asked if I like it. I don't know much about the guy, but I've had the impression he's a good Secretary of Defense. Thank you, Jeremy, for the TikTok gifts. Anyway, it's a weird story. It's a very weird story. Yeah. Yep. What else, guys? What else we got going on? TikTok, YouTube. When I had viral meningitis, I could not think. Well, I would imagine. Yeah. Well, no, but it's true though. If he had to call an ambulance, he might not have been in good shape. I mean, I've only had to take an ambulance once, but I was not in much shape to do much. Thank you, Super Hornet. And mine was simply my back muscle seized. But I mean, I was flat on my back on a couch and I couldn't move. Everything was fine. If I tried to move, I'm talking a centimeter, 10 out of 10, I've never had pain like this in my life. 10 out of 10 pain in my back, screaming, and I'd stop and then it would go away. And I'd be like, oh, and then I felt fine. And I was like, oh my God. I had to call an ambulance. And I was leaving for the airport in a few hours to go to France. And I didn't have a choice. I had to call Air France because I was like, I was in the emergency room. And I told her, I said, I'm on my back with my phone. I said, I'm literally on my back. I'm like, I'm not one of these people, but I'm supposed to be on a plane to France in 4 hours. I have got to call the airport. I can't lose the flight. So she said, okay. So I got my phone out. I called Air France and I'm like, I'm literally sitting in a hospital bed. So that got figured out. Thank God. But it was very scary. I was my own manager, so I didn't have to call anybody. But my point is, even then, it was not easy making a phone call. I mean, oh my God, and then you do the pain meds, oof. But no, it doesn't look good for what he did. It doesn't look good at all. So what else, guys? What else? Anything else about the election? Stuff about Ukraine? I went to France a week later. I had to stay a week, get physical therapy. They gave me an initial painkiller that did nothing. And then she told me, she goes, we're giving you a stronger one that is basically like an elephant tranquilizer, but we're giving you a smaller amount. And she said, if this doesn't help, then we got to figure out what we do next. And I was like, oh God. But the elephant tranquilizer actually helped. I was able to sit up, and it was still bad, but I was able to do it. Terrified. I was like Biden walking in the hospital like this. Oh my God, it was I've never had back pain. I mean, terrifying. 10 out of 10. I mean, absolutely terrifying. Nikki Haley in the primary, not doing great. I mean, Nikki Haley is the woman, I say the woman because it helps to sort of narrow down who's who. She's the woman running for president on the Republican side, former governor of South Carolina, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations under Trump. And she didn't do well in Iowa. She placed third. She was supposed to place second, according to the polls. She placed third. Right after DeSantis, but still, third is not great. Third does not show momentum. Let's see what happens in the next couple of races, but she's not doing well. See you, Khal Drogo. Have a good night. So I don't know. I don't know that she's going to have much of a chance. I mean, it feels more and more like Trump. It's Trump. Maybe she's doing. We'll see. But so far, it's still Trump, guys. Let me see here. Daniel says, do you ever think Sweden will get into NATO? Because if Russia was Ukraine, if Russia wins Ukraine, what if they invade Sweden instead so Russia won't fight NATO? Oh, I see. Well, one of the concerns of countries joining NATO is it can take a while, right? It can take a year or whatever because all the NATO countries have to approve. And in this case, everybody but for Sweden, everybody but Turkey and Hungary have approved Sweden joining NATO. The concern, obviously, is, well, if you say you're joining NATO, what if Russia says, okay, then we're going to invade you now, before you join NATO? In principle, we believe the Brits and the Americans, among others, but certainly the Brits and the Americans, made security guarantees to Sweden that we would defend them if the Russians invaded. Because otherwise, the problem you get is otherwise no one's ever joining NATO again. All Russia would have to do is go invade Sweden, and then, and we don't help, by the way, and then every other country goes, well, shit. If I try joining NATO and there's a lag time, someone else is going to invade me, and NATO's not going to help. So why join NATO, right? So, I believe we would have made a very strong commitment. One hopes. So I don't think the Russians would dare touch Sweden for that reason. And it's not clear what Russia gets out of it at this point. What would Russia get out of attacking Sweden right now? They're having enough problems with Ukraine. I mean, Russia still has to build up more before they can start attacking others, I think. Also, Scandinavian deal. Guza says there's a Scandinavian deal as well, right, that the other Scandinavian countries have probably agreed to protect Sweden as well. So, right. So, no. And by the way, the fact that we haven't heard about it publicly means privately, I'll bet you, it was communicated to the Russians. I'll bet you the U.S. and Britain and the Scandinavian countries all told the Russians privately, here's what's going to happen. As far as we're concerned, they're a member of NATO. You invade, and we are immediately declaring war on you. And as Wade just said, good point. Actually, very good point. As Wade just said, they need to go through Finland. Oh, I don't have, shoot, I've got to pull my other, where is it? Oh, I've got it over there. Hang on a second. I've got my other map. I forgot I had this. One second here. Here we go. I totally forgot about Ava's other map she made. Silly me. One second here. So again, little hard to tell because of all the black, but basically Russia, Finland, Sweden, this is water here, okay? So for the Russians to get to Sweden, they've got to cut through Finland, or they've got to go Norway to Sweden or Finland to Sweden. How are they going to do it? Both of those countries are NATO countries. I mean, yes, Kaliningrad, which is little Russian territory right here, they could send a boat from here and try to take a Swedish island, but good luck. It would be very hard for the Russians to pull that off. Yeah. Lake NATO. Exactly, Ali. Yeah. So so Sweden's in pretty good shape for that reason as well. Yeah. What else we got, guys? I think we'll do a couple more minutes of questions. And then, like I said, I want to go to Discord because we haven't done that forever. So maybe in 5 minutes, we'll head over to Discord, okay? But keep the questions coming. Do keep the gifts coming, too. Houthi update. By the way, I realized I was saying Houthis. I always thought they were called the Houthis. Not Houthis, but Houthi. And I'm wondering if maybe I've always misheard it, because today I was told it's Houthi. And I Googled, and everyone's saying Houthi. I swear to God, I remember years ago hearing Houthi. But maybe I'm crazy. In any case, the Houthis, it's going to be hard for me to say that, by the way. The Houthis, the only update is they fired at another ship today. I think U.S. registered, Danny, I'm telling you, I still think somewhere it's Houthi. I really do. That was you on YouTube, Mustard? What do you mean? Oh, that was you writing. You wrote the comment? Oh, that's funny. Okay. I didn't realize that was you. That's very funny. Well, no, because it was a valid. I Googled the videos and I went, Rwanda, why Rwanda? Oh, do you mean different group in Rwanda? I'm mixing it up with the Rwandan group. Oh, that's why then. Tutsi and Hutu? I was going to say Tutsi and Hutu, I've heard. That's interesting if that's the case. That might be what it is. In any case, they shot at another ship today. I'm not sure. I don't think they did much damage or anything, but they did shoot at another ship today. So they're still being a pain in the butt, Media in Yemen, although media in Yemen, Mike, take it with a grain of salt. Mike is writing, media in Yemen is reporting that a U.S. naval vessel in the Red Sea has struck several Houthi positions near the port city of Hodeidah with at least 2 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Interesting. Okay. OSINT Defender, be careful, because I think OSINT Defender is the account I don't trust. There's one account I block on Twitter because everyone says they're unreliable. They might be the ones. Be careful with them. But nonetheless, yeah, I didn't see any what happens on Discord? Magic. No, Discord is a chat community, and it's just kind of fun because we go and we just hang out much more informally, in some Arabic dialects. But Joseph, are they called the Houthis anywhere? I still think I'm thinking of these rebels as Houthis, not just the thing with Rwanda. Is it called? War Monitor is excellent. War Monitor is excellent for Twitter. No, Discord is free. No, you can come and hang with us for free. Yeah. This thing's free. What we do, the after show is free. Yep, absolutely. Just look for Aravosis. You have to Discord. You have to sign up for Discord, find the Aravosis thing, and look for the after party. It'll be in the top left in a few minutes. Anyway, sorry, just getting the. Just looking here, Ukraine, to see if there's any more news here. Give me a second here, guys. I'm going to look at my computer and see if there's any more news on what's going on with anything with Yemen. Actually, it'll be under Israel. It wouldn't be under there. Hang on. Yemen. Yep, the U.S.-owned cargo ship. I already knew that. I told you guys that. Let me see. Nope, nothing here. Last little bit here. No. Nope. Yeesh. Okay, yeah, not seeing anything. Oh, God. Oh, my. Sorry, I'm reading like the crazy people on Twitter. All right, nothing there. Yeah, there's no news on Twitter. Nope, nothing on the Houthis. I really cannot. I've got to find somebody that calls them Houthis so I can keep calling them. Maybe it is Houthi. In any case, guys, last little question or anything, and then we'll go. It could be that they pronounced it wrong years ago and we finally got it right. That's true, too. Peking, Beijing, Bombay, things change. Turkey, I'm not quite there on Turkey yet. I think we ought to tell Turkey once they agree to let Sweden into NATO, we'll start calling them Turkey. Until then, they're a big fat bird we eat at Thanksgiving. As far as I'm concerned. Who is the U.S.'s closest ally right now? The U.K. It always is. It's always the U.K. Yeah. I mean, it just is. It's been the U.K. forever. Yeah. Always is. Any word on getting your guests that you wanted to get on the show? No, I've got to reach out. I haven't. I was going to get a few people, and I didn't reach out, and I should. Actually, I want to get David. Oh, here's a TikTok problem, by the way. I mean, I like to sort of get the guests on TikTok because we tend to get more people than on YouTube. Thus the reason. It has a little more spread. But TikTok has this weird rule, I think, where if you don't have 1,000 followers, they won't let you come on as a guest, which is ridiculous. And I wanted, I'm friends with David Frum, who I find very interesting, Republican. Some people don't like him because of Iraq, whatever. But David's fascinating and very fascinating on national security stuff overall. And I think he'd be brilliant. I've had him on, actually, YouTube. I've had him on before. But I'd like to get him on TikTok with you guys at some point because David is fascinating on Trump, the election, and on Ukraine and national security, Middle East, like all of these issues. David would be a brilliant guest, but I've got to see how TikTok, you can't go live on TikTok under 1,000 followers, but you can't use your camera. That's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I don't think David's even on TikTok. 200 now? Camera? Yeah, but it's ridiculous. Camera. Oh, TikTok, I swear to God. I swear to God. Yeah, have him sign as a guest on my other account. That's an idea. That's a possibility. I could do that possibly. It's just absolutely ridiculous because, like, you should want me to get people to come on as guests. They shouldn't have to have 1,000 followers or I can't have them on as guests, right? In any case, TikTok, like I said, TikTok does things. I like TikTok a lot, obviously, but they do things that clearly somebody designed it. There are like young engineers, I've said it before, you young engineers, young people, I had this when I was at the United Nations. My staff in their 20s and even the 30s thought they'd been working on the internet for 5 years. 5 whole years they've been working on the internet, social media, and they're the biggest experts. They know more than me because they've been doing it for 5 years. And I even had some woman at TikTok who got mad at me at one point a couple of years ago and told me, I've been doing this for 15 years. And I looked at her and I went, I've been doing this for 30 years. What's your point? But it is true. TikTok screws things up sometimes. They screw stuff up and they shouldn't screw it up. In any case, I don't think David's on TikTok. We'll figure it out. Okay, let me do a quick summary of the news, guys, and then we will go over to Discord. All right. Quick. There's a lot of news here, so I'm doing a quick summary here. And then we're going to Discord. Ukrainian forces shot down 19 of 20 Shahed drones. Nonetheless, some Russian missiles got through into Kharkiv city. 17 people were injured. Biden met congressional leaders at the White House today to discuss Ukraine aid. Nothing came of it, as we know. German Chancellor Scholz said that Germany is providing Ukraine 7 billion euros in assistance over the next year. France is signing a new bilateral security agreement with Ukraine and will provide an additional 40 Scalp long-range missiles, among other things. Germany has handed over ammunition for Leopard 1 tanks and a number of other good things. Bloomberg says Latvia is organizing a coalition of almost 20 countries to arm the Ukrainian armed forces with thousands of new drones. The French Minister of the Armed Forces announced that they are producing 78 Caesar self-propelled howitzers for Ukraine. European Union will approve a 50 billion euro aid package for Ukraine, according to EU President Ursula von der Leyen. I read a long quote from Dmitry Medvedev, former Russian president, basically talking about genocide in Ukraine, how Ukraine isn't real, they need to be wiped off the map, very scary people, and how there will be another war. Russia's guaranteeing even if we reach a peace right now, Russia will reach another war, will cause another war until they can wipe Ukraine off the map. Russia is attempting to recruit asylum seekers as spies going into Finland, according to the Finnish and Norwegian security services. Russian companies have been increasingly leaving Cyprus as Western sanctions impact their ability to operate. Railway tracks in Russia's 3 provinces of Russia were blown up recently in sabotage attacks that Ukraine must have had a hand in. Then talked about the loss of the Russian A-50 AWACS plane that caused a lot of damage to Russia's resources for basically a lot of it's aviation resources, protecting the land, protecting from Ukrainian aircraft attacks, things like that. And finally, Tinder, the U.S.-based dating app, is pulling out of the Russian ally dictatorship of Belarus. Not clear why, but I thought it was interesting, just as a story. So, all right, guys, let's go over to Discord, discord.aravosis.com. It's a little late, but what the heck? We haven't done this in a while. So go over to Discord. It's discord.aravosis.com. If you're on Discord, just Google my name. You know, you've got to click the little verification link to show you're a real person, and then it's free. Just look for John's after party in the upper left-hand column, and we will be there probably a good half hour, I'd say. So head over there, guys. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you, mods, as always, for destroying the trolls. And everybody else, look for me tomorrow. We do this Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, U.S. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. Sean in Scotland. And I'll see you guys over there. All right? Okay. See you over Discord in a minute.